Welcome to Insights for Manufacturing, the podcast that supports the UK manufacturing sector. Hosted by Jeff Beecham, the manufacturer's recruiter. Hello and welcome to Insights for Manufacturing. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Alan Arthur, who's the CEO at the Gauge and Toolmakers Association, or GTMA. I would like to say award-winning GTMA, but I'll let Alan maybe give you the heads up on that. So welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be invited on. And your reference to the award-winning, it's a small thing, but we've been today recognised as England's best SME Manufacturing Trade Association. So it's quite nice to get an award.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on that. It's fantastic for the association, your membership, and well, UK manufacturing in general, really, isn't it? It's all. I
think so. Yeah.
All adding to the excitement at the moment. Brilliant. Well, welcome to the show. So just to get the sort of conversation started, then, for people that maybe aren't so familiar with the GTMA, could you just give a brief overview of the sort of general services and support that you offer to your members and how that service adds value to their business?
Sure, I will do. The GTMA, as you've mentioned, the origins are the Gauge and Toolmakers Association. We've now added the tagline Manufacturing Resource Centre, which more adequately describes what we do these days. Yeah. We still have toolmakers and machining companies at the heart of what we do, but our membership has extended far beyond that in our 80 plus years of existence. The essence of what the GTMA does is creates opportunities for networking, opportunities for leads that should lead to work winning for our member companies. The extensive membership now totals just under 300 member companies, all UK based, adding value to the manufacturing sector within the UK. Very vibrant, many are doing very well, I must say. And I think that the global shocks and disruptions that have been felt have simply opened up other opportunities for our member companies. Manufacturing is alive and kicking. And we're seeing a lot in the news about the ranking in the world of UK manufacturing. I don't think we should make too much about that, but it is a significant contributor to our GDP in this country.
Absolutely. I think at number 8 we are at the moment, aren't we? I think just above France. And it's really good to hear you, talk so positively about how things are going in general for your membership. It's a busy sector, and no doubt, reshoring is probably the buzzword that a lot of people are using at the moment, and long may that continue. So that's good to hear.
I think it's very simplistic, if I can say that, to look at just plain reshoring. I think what's happened is OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, brand names that you would recognise, but also top tier companies have been forced to look at their supply chain, which has been ripped apart or disrupted. They've been forced to look at the total cost of things like tooling instead of just offshoring and sourcing it to low-cost economies. What's the real cost of that? And what's the impact on quality, continuity of service? And the other thing that's going on in the background, and this is where we're at the heart of what's happening, the supply chains are becoming ever more meshed. So larger companies aren't looking just for a single supplier. They want to know that there is that supply chain network that is able to support their supplier. Yeah. And that visibility of the supply chain offers opportunities. Many of our members have moved between sectors. If you roll the coin back, 10 years, you might say many of our members were prominent in automotive and aerospace. Well, many are still in those sectors, but they've diversified. We've got members now working in medical device manufacture, in the space and telecommunications side of things, rail, and that just continues to grow. We've seen changes in procurement, and I mean particularly the British government through the MOD and other bodies like that, where they're trying to buy in the UK. And where large contracts are landed in the UK, that means those smaller bottom-feeding companies, those SMEs, then have the opportunity to bid in. And we see a real growth in that, where small componentry and assemblies are being sourced within the UK, where previously they would have been possibly other powerhouses like Germany and Japan.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see that's happening more often. I mean, I know, some of the recent large defence contracts that have been in the mainstream media are part and parcel of that discussion. And yeah, it's great for SME businesses. Let's face it. Is it around 99.99% of the business in our economy is SME generated? So we need to be supporting that as a government, don't we? Whoever's in power,
I think it's thriving despite of any government policy, to be honest with you. It's not making a political statement. I just think successive governments have moved to support other sectors, and the manufacturing industry has just got on with what it does really well, from innovation through to mass manufacture. We are never going to be able to align ourselves and compete alongside some of those huge powers around the world. But what we do very well. And reputation counts for quite a lot, particularly when the larger companies are struggling with quality and continuity of supply.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you and I met at the Interplast show a few weeks ago in Birmingham at the NEC. So we had the opportunity to have a quick face-to-face chat before we lined up this podcast. And I understand it's been about a year since you sort of took over as CEO at the GTMA. How you mentioned some of the sort of changes over that 80-year period. What have been the sort of changes in the last sort of 12 months or so that you may have been involved in, or have there been any sort of shifts in more recent times as the GTMA has evolved that sort of worth noting?
I think so. It's worth mentioning here the previous incumbent, the previous CEO, Julia, was in place for 25 years.
Yes.
And she oversaw a significant change throughout that time, not just one step change, and was able to align the GTMA for what was required coming forwards. So her visionary approach was absolutely excellent. I inherited a really excellent portfolio and an excellent team in the GTMA. And what we've done over the last 12 months is push forward on that agenda. Certainly in the last 18 months, and particularly in the last 12 months, we've seen a regionalisation. So not just reshoring, but there are initiatives in place in the UK to stimulate growth in certain regions of England and in Scotland and in Wales. And that's promoting companies to grow and to move and to migrate. We see changes in the energy sector, for instance, that largely props up the northeast and up into Scotland.
Yes,
where we're moving from the emphasis on drilling for oil, etc., through to renewables. But there's also the decommissioning work for the oil and gas industry. So there are massive opportunities there. And some of those regional authorities are able to offer stimulus or packages that actually encourage that. We are running an event next year in Wales. We're running another event up in Scotland. I'm in Glasgow later on this month for a supply chain event. And already we've drawn or attracted attention by a number of bodies from Scotland who want to work with us.
Brilliant.
This isn't about world domination. This is about representation. And I just feel that it's so important to keep these themes going. Where we see new opportunities, we have to go forwards very quickly to be able to advise our members and provide that market intelligence. They don't always have the opportunity to do that. If they want to get up to speed very quickly, we'll brief them. We produce a magazine biannually that puts forward those key elements, things such as the Rolls-Royce initiative to develop and build modularized nuclear reactors, which will basically commoditize that sector.
Yeah.
Now that's a manufacturing challenge. They can already build the reactors. They're putting them into submarines. What's the real challenge is for Rolls-Royce, traditionally an infrastructure company and a power company, to turn themselves into a manufacturing company, where they're doing production line assembly, akin to what happens in the automotive sector. So massive changes, again, massive opportunities. And SMEs are not always well equipped to promote themselves, but also to identify how they get into that supply chain. And that really falls to us. That's our job.
Well, that's really good news. And yeah, the whole sort of mini or small nuclear reactors, yeah, there will be people out there that aren't fans of nuclear power, full stop. It's, it's not for everybody. I'm personally pro nuclear power. That's just my opinion. But I think these small reactors, are so important. If the technology is already there and we're already using it, for subs and things like that, then let's face it, if we're not digging coal out of the ground anymore and wind power, is there enough of that generated? All these other renewables.
I
think
don't
we
think
need
it's
some
a
other
conscience
options.
issue. I really don't think it's a
Okay.
conscience issue. It's a technology issue.
Yeah.
And whether that be whether you're a supporter of electric vehicles, EVs, or whether you're a supporter of hydrogen or whatever the propulsion system needs to be for a vehicle. If you're a manufacturer, what you're looking at is, what does this mean for the componentry? There's no doubt about it. Moving away from internal combustion engines reduces the number of components that a vehicle needs.
Yeah.
However, there are other elements to that system, the delivery of the system, the distribution, the infrastructure of distributing hydrogen. How do you get that hydrogen into the vehicles? What componentry do you need for that? So as a manufacturer, you've got to be open-minded to these things. Of course, what you do day to day may appear to be the same thing every day, but over a short, medium, and long-term period, that changes. It's subtle. And the type of people you need, the type of skills you need to retain in your business and attract to your business change constantly. It's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. The employment opportunities in manufacturing at the moment, I would say, certainly since I started in engineering in the early 80s, it's never been better. For those either skilled or wanting to be skilled, there are massive opportunities out there. Whether that be in the propulsion systems, as I've explained, for vehicles, or whether that be in the alternative energy sources, of which we will need every version. Every version will come into the mix of energy supply in the UK. And if we leave it alone, others will pursue it and others will develop that technology. Others will have that ingrained in their education system, and they will be supplying the engineers of the future. And that cannot be. We need to be in the game.
Well, that's just, I've spoken about the sort of skills crisis, if you like, with a number of podcast guests over the last sort of 18 months. And, here's another reason why, manufacturing and engineering should be appealing to the youngsters of today and the sort of workforce of tomorrow. It's not just about, making things that are nice to haves. It's, we need to make things and have technology that enables us to survive and heat our homes and get us all around. And when you factor in the environmental side of things, the younger generation are really sort of hot on that, aren't they? It seems to be very popular. So, organizations like GTMA, I think are in a really good place to be able to harness some of the curiosity of the youngsters of today, and to get that message out there that tool making or manufacturing components or jigs and fixtures, whatever it might be, it's not this old fashioned dirty factory based role where it's all the same. Technology's changing rapidly, and we do need people at all levels in that talent pool coming into businesses to make a difference. So
and we need to educate people continually on how that's changing. It's not about, for most people, it's not about standing at a machine. The machine will do what the machine can do. It's about the integrators. It's about how you're smart at feeding the information into that machine, how you're smart about choosing the technique to actually manufacture the goods it's manufacturing, and how you integrate that machine with other machines using robotic technology and other transfer mechanisms. And all of that now is also done in a virtual environment. So the concept of the digital twin is alive and kicking. You're not going to get sign-off for a massive investment without first having visualization of how that works, right down to the fine detail. And quite often these things are modeled in the virtual world down to every last nut and bolt. And so you can simulate how the factory is going to work before you've even laid out the first pounds or dollars or euros to actually invest in the equipment. And it's very exciting. And you put alongside that the learning systems, the deep learning engines and AI that's coming into the marketplace. None of this stands alone. I was one of the, not the pioneers, but one of the early adopters of additive manufacturing, or 3D printing, as you might call it, in my postgrad studies back in my days in Nottingham in the 90s. So it's been around for a long while. But right back then, those of us involved at the heart of it knew that it was a technology that needed to be integrated. It won't change the world. Nothing does. What happens is you chip away, you change how things happen, and those small changes make bigger changes. So now we see typically people in a manufacturing environment running additive manufacturing 3D printing as part of the integrated response to a customer, be that early models for visualization or be that actual products that are then fitted to or adapted to existing components.
Absolutely. And the sort of additive manufacturing or 3D printing is, you know, I mean, that's a sort of sector in itself that's just going vertical at the moment, isn't it? You know, and it's
it's enabled by other technologies alongside it. High-speed machining and control of CNC machining now means that you can get such accuracies that couldn't have been dreamed of before. Surface finishing is a whole technology of its own, both creating surfaces and also measuring those surfaces, and then explaining in a data sense what those surfaces look like down to microscopic level, which is vital if you're going to have functional surfaces for things like turbine blades or the inside of air ducts for Formula One race vehicles, or if you're going to then apply some micro or nano coatings to the surface, you've got to characterize it. So the whole calibration, metrology, surface measurement, all of that technology comes into it, and that is at the heart of manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a youngster, I guess, you know, it certainly opens the mind. It's a bit mind-boggling sometimes. I'm not an engineer, you know, I've been in and around, you know, all of the manufacturing processes that are out there over the last 25 years. I've come across them in some shape or form at certain parts of my recruitment career. But when you look at the technology involved in how to machine components or how to develop a new machine, that, you know, the guys over at the MTC, Manufacturing Technologies Association, all of these sort of organizations helping manufacturers create the stuff in the first place is okay having a design, but how do you actually make that? And they're coming up with, you know, wonderful you know, new technologies, you know, to take the whole industry forward. It's just so vibrant.
It's team spirit, Jeff. Because it's not only the physical team of the people, it's the physical team of the technologies. So it might be necessary to have a flow system that involves CNC machining or computer numerical control machining, CAD data feeding in at one end, robotic transfers in the middle, some surface preparation in the middle, then some additive manufacturing taking place to deposit preferential material, to give it wear characteristics, then inspection systems. And so it goes on and on and on. And that isn't seen by the consumer. The consumer sees a product. But even the packaging on that product has to be manufactured, and the machines have to be manufactured to manufacture the packaging. And so it goes on.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. So just going back to the, you know, the topic of sort of skills and the, you know, we spoke about sort of supply chain challenges and reshoring and all that sort of stuff. How is the GTMA actually supporting its members in addressing some of those issues? You know, what are you involved in to sort of you know, provide that support?
We're able to do a number of things. We're not able to do everything. Delivery of training across the UK is very patchy in terms of tool making, in terms of machining. Some is delivered at colleges. If you go to, if you like, the traditional heartland of the West Midlands, there is something of a void that's been filled now with companies such as Incom, which is a training delivery company. They've got several places across the West Midlands, and they train apprentices from the sort of 16-year age group right through to level 6, which is full degree status.
Yeah. And I think they've partnership with C. Brandauer for their tooling academy. Is that right?
They have indeed, and they're delivering bespoke training into Jaguar Land Rover for the people who mind the tooling. So they're not tool makers. They're people who are expected to watch the tooling, to look at the tooling operate in the factory, to check the tooling, to service the tooling when you get a breakdown and things like that.
Yeah.
And so a company like Incom is absolutely vital as one of the key links in the chain to provide that bespoke training to enable companies such as Jaguar Land Rover, where they can't recruit tool makers to do that job. What they want is people with plus knowledge. And really, that's how that happens. In the background, also, all of the apprenticeship paperwork is all being rewritten and resubmitted to the government. So we're part of a group of organisations who are funding and helping that happen for the tool making side of things at level 3, which is standard apprenticeship level for tool making. So we're delighted to be part of that. And we're involved with a number of universities as well. It's important for us to keep our, not just finger on the pulse, but keep the GTMA membership involved with projects that can actually draw benefit in the sort of medium to long term. So where integration of technology is part of a university project, we want to know about it because we've got members who can partner the university to help make the best job out of that. And indeed, that's happening in many cases. And I would include in that the University of Nottingham, University of Birmingham, Warwick University, down into Bristol, and a number of others now in the north of England.
Great collaboration across different levels there in academia. You know, the universities are important, the apprenticeships are important, technology providers are important. So yeah, I've got a visual jigsaw puzzle here that's all fitted together from your explanation there. Thank you very much for sharing that.
Jeff, it's not all great news. Of course it's not. The prospects are great and the opportunities for individuals are superb at the moment. The wages that you might expect for apprentices and graduates are very, very good. Inevitably, in any profession, you come in at the bottom end and you have to work your way up. But those opportunities for progression are truly there now for those who want it. And they can grow very quickly. And what we've talked about earlier in this podcast about the technologies is absolutely vital. And unless we keep pushing that in the UK, we won't attract the best talent into the engineering pool to exploit the new technologies of tomorrow.
You mentioned, new technologies. We spoke about additive manufacturing a bit earlier. What do you just want to sort of throw a little bit of a spotlight on some of the other emerging technologies that are, helping to shape the future of manufacturing, and how's the GTMA sort of adapt into those sort of changes?
Sure. I think one element of that is accuracy level, where new technologies, non-contact measurement, using lasers to modify surfaces. That is a technology that's come down into the microscale and it's going down into the nanoscale now. So that surface modification is absolutely vital for everything from replacement hip and knee joints, orthopedic type work, right the way through to wind tunnel tests on components that fit onto high-speed vehicles. I'm talking about here aerospace type vehicles and ballistic technology. So that granular level of technology is being enhanced all the time. The ability to visualize and interact with haptic feedback, something that doesn't even exist yet, is absolutely vital. It's tested, it's proven before people embark upon the actual investment in the infrastructure and the technology to actually be able to create the components that they want. So that's going on, and the movement around the world of technologies means that the biggest change we're seeing is, and I've mentioned it before, in the integration, in the seamless, speedy movement of data, of knowledge, be it globally moving or even within a factory. And that data being retained and being a known entity. So, we would all want to make sure that every medical device we ever used was traceable back to the people who made the components. We all want to know, if we're in an aeroplane, that that's not going to fall to the ground, that everything back to the source of the metal ore that goes into making the spindle for the wheels, has all been tested and it's all traceable. And that Industry 4 concept, that seamless data, is a massive area of technological growth.
Yeah.
There are other techniques that are coming out for manufacture without tooling. So additive manufacture will be an example of that.
Yes.
But there are other techniques using lasers, using robotic implements to actually shape sheet metal and solids without the use of tooling. And those technologies will come to the fore. And then we move into the realms of, if you like, the kind of what we would say is make-believe. That's the new materials. The materials we don't even know about yet that might feature on a James Bond film and then come into reality. If we look back at old James Bond films from the 70s and 80s and we all wondered at that futuristic technology, well, it was there already. And it came and it went, and there's new technology now. And I think that realm of future gazing, I think, is really, really important. The future human achievement, if you like, on the bigger scale, is going to be in space. It's going to be all about communications, and it's going to be all about space. And satellite technology is right here in the UK, not just the satellites that are sent up, but the control of those satellites from here on planet Earth.
Yeah.
So we've got a great footprint in that, particularly down the sort of M5 corridor, down in the sort of Bristol area.
Yep.
A lot of technologies around there that specialize in that area. During the last 5 years, quite a bit of movement from aerospace companies in the supply chain looking into the space supply chain.
Yeah.
I know at the latest DSEI show this year, there was a specific hangar, if you like, or huge area given over to space technology. It's not so dissimilar to aerospace, but it has its own demands. Can't get it back is one of them. So once it's up there forever, pretty much. So new techniques have to come about. New materials will be driven by that exploration, and it all comes down to, Joe and Jane working in a high-tech factory, coming up with something new and being able to do something in a better way than someone else.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about R&D. How's research and development helping drive the manufacturing sector? And I suppose that's what you've been talking about. It's these people behind the scenes that are developing, maybe materials or mechanisms, components, that are developed for years and years that we don't, the end user doesn't always see anyway, but even the manufacturing businesses won't be aware. They're going to be using different processes maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, or maybe the next 2 years, to what they have traditionally. So there's a hell of a lot of work going on in R&D, isn't there?
There is, and I'll come back to banging my drum on the word integration.
Yes.
Ideas come from people, but they need to be put into the realms of reality.
Yeah.
So you need that collaboration between companies that can do it, people who can think about it, and right in the middle of the people who look at the actual design for manufacture. Is it possible to actually manufacture what we're actually coming up with? And do we have the materials available? And if not, who can give them to us? And how can they give them to us? And when can it come? And then how can we program the work? So it's not looking at things in isolation. It's looking at that whole gambit and bringing forward the technology. And we do it very well. The universities in this country are very intellectualized. They tried to gear themselves up more as applications-based. But actually, the best way for them to do it is to grab hold of 2 or 3 trusted manufacturing companies and form that alliance. And universities like the University of Warwick have been very, very good at doing that. And other universities, Heriot-Watt also, of aligning themselves with key players in the commercial marketplace and actually achieving much more because of that. And we'll see more of that going on. And we applaud it, and lots of our members are benefiting from that. And again, this isn't about highbrow, lowbrow. This is about keeping our members informed of what's going on. They have then the informed choice to go and chase down the opportunities. Yeah.
There seems to be a number of sort of businesses springing up, startup businesses that have been spun out of university research, and that's really great to see.
I think you see that particularly, sorry, Jeff, to cut across you, but on the medical device side of things, the innovative inventor type people come up with a great idea, they exploit it through commercialization of that idea.
Yeah.
That grows into a bigger company. They feel uncomfortable being in the bigger company. The bigger company carries on commercializing that and some other ideas, and that individual moves on and starts up again.
Yeah.
With a new idea. And that is the British spirit, I think.
Yeah.
We've kind of captured innovation right there.
Yeah. Innovation coupled with the entrepreneurialism.
Absolutely.
But that's the thing about entrepreneurs, isn't it? You know, sometimes they have a great idea, but then, you know, they'll have a concept, but then don't necessarily know the best way to make something or even take it to market. You know, it's a mix of different skills, isn't it?
It is.
Which makes it all a challenge and more interesting when these things work.
And commercial organisations are risk averse. You talk to any board of directors and try to get some money out of them. The answer is, well, what's the return on investment? You know,
absolutely.
It has to be that cynical view. It has to be a realistic appraisal of what the risks are around it. And if the risks are acceptable, then the investment comes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where those partnerships work best. A realistic appraisal of what could be achieved. You never quite know. You don't know how much you're going to lose along the way, financially or time-wise. You know, is 90% acceptable to you in terms of achieving the aim? Is 80%, 60%, 50%? What value does that bring? And all of those assessments have to be made at the academic level and at the commercial level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a number of different topics we've covered, all feeding into, you know, the sort of current and ongoing and future success of UK manufacturing. What about sustainability? Because I mean, this is a huge topic at the moment. What sort of projects or initiatives are GTMA involved in to sort of promote or help, you know, manufacturing practices, you know, amongst its members in terms of sustainability?
Well, I'm glad you've sort of put it into that context, Jeff, because often people talk about sustainability as not doing anything. If you don't do anything, you don't generate a carbon footprint. That's not realistic for making things, because as soon as you try to make something, you're generating heat. You are consuming. So it's about the careful, calculated management of those resources, be that the energy that's put into the process, or be that the people, or be that the chemicals, the product, and the circularity of that. How is it managed afterwards? We've had a long journey to go away from joining together bits of plastic that can't then be taken apart. You know, most assemblies now, where they are dissimilar materials, are dismantleable.
Yeah.
So they are fully recyclable. It's not necessarily true of things like composites, where you're looking for an interwoven, sometimes literally interwoven material that can never be separated out again. But most sub-assemblies can be dismantled now. And that's been a major move forwards. And this idea of circularity is taking account of where does it go afterwards? How long does that product last? When and how and who will disassemble it? And then what happens to those component parts? It's not good enough to just say, okay, well, we're going to make park benches out of the waste material. Because what happens to the park benches when they come to the end of their life? And I think that longer vision is there now. People are having to look at it. Several other factors are pressurizing manufacturers down the road of true sustainability rather than what we hear as greenwashing.
Yes.
One of the key factors is the trickle down. Anyone who wants a government contract now has to demonstrate full visibility of the carbon footprint, not only of what they do, but of what their suppliers do.
Yes.
So many of our members who probably never thought it was coming to them are having to comply with effectively the sustainability requirements of a top tier company just to become a supplier. So how do they handle their waste product? How do they handle their waste fluids? How do they recycle their cutting fluids? You know, what percentage are they reclaiming? What technology can they be adopting? So one of our members who are into pattern making have just won the first King's Award for sustainability in manufacturing. They have many initiatives that they've employed, including changing their shift pattern to exploit availability of energy. They haven't just gone through this routine changing your lighting to improve the energy side. They no longer accept plastic into the factory. They collect cardboard from all of the surrounding companies free of charge and actually use that cardboard in a shredded format to pack their components to send them out. They track all of their packaging in and out of the company so they can put numbers on the doors. So when the big client comes calling and says, can you prove your carbon credentials? The answer is yes, they can. So sustainability, coming back to your introduction, which was posed absolutely correctly, it's about careful, exact management of the resources, trying to limit the impact from what you need to do to make the component, and taking those sensible decisions, making the investment, and making sure you chart how that investment returns back into your company. Your ability to win new work should be one of those factors. That the fact that you're reshoring work, so you're removing those miles that would have been traveled by offering the product in this country, that is a key element to it as well. And this is often passed over when people look at the price of a component.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you sort of finished that sort of paragraph on that particular topic. You know, it's about the overall cost and benefit, isn't it? It should never be just about price. So there's lots of things feeding into that, and I guess from my point of view, you know, I've spent, you know, many years, nearly 25 years recruiting within engineering and manufacturing, and I've come across things like DFM, design for manufacturing, design for assembly, you know, but where we are in the world at the moment, you know, from an outsider looking in, because as I say, I'm not an engineer, but, you know, when I start trying to think of how this process actually works, you know, you're going to have people now who are designing things with recycling in mind, with sustainability in mind, with waste. So you've probably already got DFR, you know, design for recycling or design for sustainability, the circular economy.
There's design for disassembly that's been around for a while. But the circularity is a tougher nut to crack, and that's because you aren't always in control ultimately of where the waste goes to. So you might be able to, you know, an original vehicle manufacturer, for instance, will map out, and I notice there's a recent initiative by Jaguar Land Rover to get all of the battery packs from their vehicles into the agricultural community to be used on farms. For ancillary equipment on farms, because they've got to find a way to repurpose the product at the end of its life within that confines of being in a vehicle. What then needs to happen, obviously, after that, someone needs to take the step of saying what happens to those batteries after they have their useful life in an agricultural context. So it just goes on and on and on, and that is how we get ultimately to a better management of resources. Rather than just let's make it today, it doesn't matter what we make it of, as long as it satisfies the client's requirements. I think there's got to be that partnership, and again, the word integration of everyone down the line, not just the people who are making and disassembling, or the people who are using, like us as consumers, but also the disassembly. I bring into here things like packaging. Everybody hates plastic packaging, sure. You know, you ask anyone, nobody's going to tell you they love plastic packaging.
That's true, very true.
But guess what? Most of what you receive is packaged plastic, and there are very, very good reasons for that, because there aren't always alternatives. So what's happening now with things like distribution of pharmaceuticals and self-use of medical devices is the packaging is being designed totally for reuse. So moving forwards, you will receive your drugs in a small sender unit. It might be a little tube, or it might be some sort of unit that you put onto your arm and you press to deliver the drug into you. So you need to remove that from the packaging safely, so it arrives with you safely. You remove it from the packaging safely. You then need to put it back into the packaging. And then ultimately, when all of those elements are back in the packaging goes back to the original supplier, who then recycles that packaging as the packaging. So we're not talking about remaking the packaging. We're talking about removing those components that you've used, recycling those, cleansing the packaging, be it under UV light or any kind of treatment, and then reusing that. So you can see very quickly how we're going to get to a situation where the packaging will be more intricate than what it contains. And it's probably going to cost more for the packaging than the components that are contained within it. So then you look at the global scale, it's no surprise to see some of the massive acquisitions globally that have been taking place of packaging companies by people like Amazon.
Yeah.
They've been buying up these companies so that they get the full circularity of the process chain. So they're all logistics companies that are buying up plastic packaging companies for this continuum that's going to exist.
Well, that's a great thing. I was going to ask you, actually, you mentioned the GTMA member that had sort of won this King's Award. Are you seeing a lot of collaboration between members on how they got there, or, you know, best practice, and how to, you know, is there a sort of once one company's been successful at this, you know, are they tending to want or have enough time to then share that knowledge and best practice with other members, for example?
Well, those that achieve are evangelists, and they want to share the story. Those that have not achieved that are the more reluctant people, and they will be forced into adopting the best practice. So you've got a choice, really, haven't you? You set your stall out, you become part of the best practice, or you wait until you're dragged kicking and screaming, or you refuse to take part and you're out of business. There really are only those options as a manufacturer.
Absolutely.
And just small things. We've got a company in membership who specialise in retrofit elements onto machining centres that will reclaim for you more of your cutting fluid and extract for you more of the swarf componentry in that cutting fluid. And they use all sorts of clever techniques, including magnetics, to do that. And they'll retrofit that on your machine. So, hey, guess what? You get more out of your cutting fluids, so you're getting better value for money, less effluent, less disposal, so your carbon footprint is reduced. So all these little things add up to a much better way to make what you were making in the first place. And you might even not improve the product, but you can improve the process to get the product.
Yeah. I dare say some of that would that result in a sort of lower piece price as well?
It can do.
So there's another benefit as well. So it should be like pushing against an open door, really, shouldn't it?
I think once it happens once or twice, the pre-qualification side of things, once you realise as a company that doing these things gets you through an open door to compete for work, then of course you're going to carry on that journey. Yeah,
brilliant. Okay, are there any initiatives coming up or any sort of events? I know we were at the Interplast. I mean, is there anything else in the calendar this year that GTMA are involved in that manufacturing professionals should look forward to maybe getting involved in or visiting?
Yes, certainly. Later this month, the 25th, 26th of October, there's a supply chain event in Glasgow. It's not being run by the GTMA, it's being run by a company we work closely with. So I'll be speaking there about the opportunities in modular construction, particularly for the nuclear side that we've mentioned, the small nuclear reactors. There are a few other interesting talks there as well. And so we'll be trying to engage people to talk about GTMA membership. And we're looking to set up a Scotland event next year. So some of the people we've been talking to will be there to meet with me to discuss maybe stating that at the MIS Centre, which is the National Manufacturing Scotland Centre, just outside Glasgow. That's followed the following week by Advanced Manufacturing at the NEC, a 2-day event. That will be very busy. We're in that period at the moment where people are attending trade shows, and particularly SMEs are out there keen to talk to people about what they do and what they can offer. And then moving into next month, we run a unique event called Meet the Toolmaker. We run this every 2 years with the British Plastics Federation. So what we do is we line up the best toolmakers. So we'll have 30 toolmakers who will all have desktop displays, and the British Plastics Federation will bring the moulders to that event. We're running it within Incom, so we can showcase the training that's going on at the Incom facility, so promoting the best practice in what they do. And it's just one junction away from the Jaguar Land Rover plant for obvious reasons. That will attract their attention as well. So that's run on the 15th of November, free to attend. Where GTMA run an event, we try to run it free to attend, free to park, to maximise the attendance. They tend to be one-day events. So that's running in November on the 15th. Meet the Toolmaker. Anyone puts it into the internet search engines, they'll get that.
Great.
And then we kind of go into a quieter period in December, and then we emerge in January. We're at Autosports, which is in the first week of January. There is a big engineering section in Autosports because, of course, it's all about performance.
Yeah.
So much as everyone likes to see the shiny facade of a race car or a motorcycle, it's about what goes on in the power plant.
Yeah.
And all that componentry needs to be sorted out along with heat exchangers, drivetrains, etc. So GTMA support that. We'll have a group of members at that event, springboarding into the new year.
And where's that one being held?
When is it?
Where?
That's being held at the NEC.
Oh, that's at the NEC as well. Okay.
Yep. So that's run. The schedule shows me that 11th and 12th of January is the Autosport show.
Great.
I believe it then goes over the weekend for people who are interested in racing cars and that type of thing. It turns into a more social sort of family event, but certainly for the 11th and 12th, it's more technical and it's around the componentry and what people can do.
Brilliant.
For that sector. And with Southern Manufacturing. And so the annual rotation of trade events starts.
Yeah. Well, it's a vibrant, as you said at the start, it's a vibrant sector. There's lots going on and lots of opportunity. So, okay, well, it's been a really interesting discussion today, Alan. Just before we sort of finish up, do you have a sort of key message or takeaway you'd like to leave for our audience, in terms of, what's going on, the importance of, what GTMA can do, and any sort of, if you had a one sentence ending statement, how would you summarize that?
I'd like to do two. I'd like to do
go
one
on, feel free.
One on behalf of the GTMA, really, first and foremost, that quite often people who move from companies who are members of the GTMA then reintroduce us to those other companies.
Yeah.
And that is a telltale sign. They enjoy that level of support, and GTMA will continue to provide that going forwards.
Yeah.
We're increasing the number of events we're involved with. I don't have to make a sales pitch. It's a very soft sell as far as GTMA membership goes. We're there to support. We're there to make introductions. We're there to help generate opportunities for the manufacturing community. And from my perspective, as a personal note, I mentioned earlier in the talk, entered the engineering fray in the early 80s. I entered as a structural engineer, civil engineer. I migrated over into being a mechanical production engineer and then went into mechanical engineering. I find myself now not involved at the core of engineering, but all I'd say is that fluidity, that ability to move between the disciplines has improved rather than going the other way. The commonality and the overlap between the nuclear industry, for instance, the defense industry, the manufacturing industry, the civil engineering construction industry, that's all embodied in this latest technology with Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, yeah.
So an engineer is an engineer. It's someone who has an ability and a knowledge and an interest around solving technical problems. So any of your audience who are in or looking to be recruited into engineering, I would advise them to be very open-minded to where that leads, not just what they achieve in the first place.
That sounds like some very, very good advice. I can't disagree with that at all. So, well, Alan, thank you very much for this conversation. It's been an absolute delight for me. I always love learning new things, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of value-added insights taken away from this podcast by the audience. So that wraps up today's episode. I hope the audience have enjoyed our discussion. Thanks again to Alan Arthur from the GTMA. Thank you for listening, and look out for the next episode of Insights for Manufacturing. See you next time, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.